And then when we start looking at communication, so this is one of my favorite models when it comes to communication, called the intent impact gap. So there's always this gap whenever we interact with someone else, have some kind of communication face to face, by email. There's what our intention is in that communication, and then there's what actually happens, right? The message sent is not always the message received, and this gap always exists. It's bigger or smaller depending on how alike we are, how much trust we have with others. But it always exists to some extent. And in this gap, we have frustration and judgment, and eroded trust, which ultimately results in poor productivity, missing deadlines, turnover. So the goal is to see how can we close this gap, and how we have 3 steps. So first one is this idea of self-awareness. Those of you that know me well have probably heard me talk of Dr. Tasha Eurich. He has done research on the science of self-awareness. And this statistic blows me away that I think Claire heard me say this probably when you saw me out at the ropes course. I think it's 90% of professionals think that they understand themselves well, but the research shows it maybe is 75 or 90. Forgive me, I don't remember the exact number, but 5 to 10% of that percentage actually have an accurate understanding of ourselves. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to shining that light on ourselves, understanding our strengths, our areas for opportunity, for improvement, and ultimately how we communicate. And then putting that onto others, being curious about what others, what their preferences are and what they need, and then adapting intentionally. And there's that word intention again, right? Being intentional about how we're communicating with others, taking a pause before hitting send on that email, and considering who we're sending that email to. And do we need to get more to the facts? Do we need to consider more feelings? Do we need to, right? Do we need to add more detail because we know they're going to have more questions? Do we need to pull out detail because we know if we give them too much, they're not even going to read it, right? So really understanding your audience and making those adjustments.